Welcome everyone, this is the Tekken 8 King Basics Guide. The short explanation of King is pretty simple. He's a grappler, so he's always trying to get hands on the opponent, and he has really good tools to get into that range, but he's also no slouch when it comes to keep out. At the end of the day though, it's the grabs that take home the glory. Now, this guide is meant for beginners or intermediate players looking to quickly pick up a new character, so expect a brief rundown to jumpstart your learning and get you playing some matches. We will keep the technical lingo, especially frames, to a minimum, but you should still have some knowledge on basic standardized Tekken terms, especially notations and terms for various game mechanics. In other words, this guide is meant for beginners, but you should already know a little bit about the game, just not necessarily the character. There are some links in the video description below to help you out. Similarly, make note that we are on version 2.01 as of this recording. Update videos will be made when newer versions with balance changes come out, so be on the lookout for those as this video ages. But enough of all that, let us begin. We'll start with grabs since those are obviously the centerpiece of King's offense. Grabs in Tekken have a lot of nuance, much of which can't be addressed in this guide, but we can take a simple approach, which starts by merely mixing up your breaks. You have a bunch to choose from, of course, but you'll see some more than others. For a one break, giant swing is the gold standard, in large part because it's the only non-chain one break throw he has. Even so, it's a quick grab and it does big damage even if they mitigate it with a tech roll, unless you throw them into the wall, in which case you get even more damage and of course they can't tech roll off the wall. For two breaks, you'll normally see either the twister, which is the same input as the giant swing just with a 2 attack, or you'll see tombstone, maybe the occasional knee bash. Regardless, they all do huge damage, and tombstone in particular gives a great wake up position. For a 1+2 break, you'll see muscle buster on occasion and perhaps up forward 1+2 since you can throw people into the wall with that. But Shining Wizard is the star of the show. It's just as fast as giant swing, it hits hard, gives a good wake up position, and believe it or not, the grab animation is the exact same as giant swing. So if you can learn to do a dashing giant swing, this is a true mix-up since it's not possible to tell the difference between them. The big hurdle is getting the instant running timing down. What makes these scary is that although the inputs might seem daunting to a new player, you can buffer a lot of it. So for example, if you do 2-1, which is a strong jab poke string, you can buffer giant swing, twister, or tombstone. You can also buffer the inputs from things that will at first seem really weird, like down back 3 and toe kick. The trick here is timing the hold on the last direction input and pressing the attack button as soon as you recover. But if you can get it down, it can really catch people off guard. Buffering grabs out of attacks is essential to keep that pressure up. For a normal grab game, you can actually just stick to those, but we have to talk about the chains, right? This is the stuff that can really hurt if you get them started. For your pleasure, I have included a cheat sheet that goes over the various chain routes. Longtime viewers will recognize this from Tekken 7 because it hasn't really changed all that much. We can't go over all of these, but there are two general notes to keep in mind. The first is that you still want to follow that mix-up philosophy when you pick your routes. Once the chain starts, the breaks from then on are a true mix-up, but if you only learn one route and they figure out the break for it, then it becomes useless. Secondly, the start of all these chains have the same animation, so just like Giant Swing and Shining Wizard, this is a true guess as well between a 1 break and a 2 break. There are two odd men out that need mentioning quickly. First are his crouch grabs. These are unbreakable, which is simply a system-wide change in Tekken 8 for crouch grabs. The other is the grab from his new Jaguar sprint. This is also unbreakable, which is a good segue into his stances because your options are pretty straightforward. For the Jag sprint, your threat is the grab or the low. You have two safe mids for the mix-up, one of which is also good for anti-step, or you can try to use the high for block pressure. Jag step is almost identical. Your main threat is the grab. You have two safe mids for your mix-up, or you can use Jag step 4 for block pressure. You can also try using Jag step 1 to catch a launch since it's safe as well, it's just a high. The main difference with Jag step versus sprint is that the step grab is breakable. However, like we talked about, the break is a true guess since the animations for both are the same. The other notable difference is that you can hold Jag step, and after one spin, the block and hit advantages for all the attacks get significantly better. For example, a charged Jag step 4 becomes a guard break. If we look at his crouch dash, you'll again see this theme. You have the grab guess just like Jaguar step, you have a few very strong mids and even a fairly low risk mid launcher, as well as a couple of utility options like while standing 2, which is homing. We'll end this section with some notes on his neutral, which is still very important for King just like any character. What you'll notice though is that a lot of your tools are geared towards getting those juicy grab opportunities. For instance, his low pokes like down 3, down 4, and down forward 4 are there just to tick away and slow your opponent down, because if they swing after these, you're normally in a good position to move around and cause some whiffs. His other lows, like down back 3, down back 4, and even full crouch down forward 1, are a bit too slow to be true mix-up tools, but are still valuable for other reasons, like going under highs. The singular exception is perhaps forward forward neutral 2, which has great range, solid damage, hits grounded, goes under highs, and does some nasty damage on counter hit. It's incredibly annoying and can definitely break defenses. Pokes like 1-2-1, 2-1, down forward 1, and down forward 2 are all great at serving the grab strategy since the nature of the strings are good at stopping buttons. And with something like down forward 2, you might get a nice little juggle if it lands counter hit. You also have an assortment of pressure tools like forward forward neutral 2, which does no damage but is very quick, very safe, and gives follow-ups on counter hit. Or forward 1+4, which does good damage and gives advantage on block. Or forward 3, which is a common safe mid check that has a grab extension on hit. And if you're having trouble getting in, never fear, you have running 3, which is another heavy hitting mid that gives sizable advantage on block, and forward forward 1, which is a safe, rangy, homing, heavy hitting mid, or even his running exploder, which is a particularly fun move. And there are a lot of other tools that you may or may not sprinkle in depending on your style, like down back 2, forward forward 2, up 1+2, or up forward 1. The point to take home is that these tools are largely there to help facilitate grab follow-ups, or they are utility tools reserved for specific circumstances. But the fact that he has so many of those and he hits so damn hard just builds to his strength. King is more of a defensive beast than you may at first realize. Let's start with the fact that his 1-2 jab string is the highest damage for a standard 1-2 for any character in the game, and he can use it for both interrupts and punishing. But he also has 2-1, which is a safe high mid that does even more damage and serves the same purpose. He has back 1-2, which is only a tad slower and hits really hard, then back 2-1 if you want to try for that knockdown or splat, then he can start launching with hop kick. His crouch follows this same pattern. While standing 4 is in the S tier damage for just a single hit, then he has while standing 2-2 if you again want more damage or a splat, then full crouch down forward 2 for your launch. All of these are dangerous if someone whiffs on you. The only tool you might use for whiffs that isn't on this list is forward 2-1, which has fantastic range and damage plus the heat engage. It just comes with some duck risk if you're not careful. If you need to go under highs, we actually already mentioned a few tools like down back 3, down back 4, and forward forward neutral 2. That last one being the most common. If you want high risk but high reward, you also have down 1+2. Otherwise, the old raw duck and punish works well since your crouch punishing is strong. Going over lows basically boils down to 2 options, forward 4 or hop kick. Hop kick gives you the better reward but for more risk, whereas forward 4 is safe and homing. Jag step is an actual jump 2, so that works, which is fun. You have some slower options like up 1+2, but that's more for setups, not so much to get you out of a jam. Outside of the evasive stuff, you have several options to counter buttons. You can still use traditional moves like back 1-2, but since you have to commit to both hits now, there's considerable risk there. He also has a unique crouch jab interrupt tool with down 1-2, which is really useful. Or he actually has 2 reversals, one for kicks and one for right punches. You also have some armor moves that are nice. Down back 1+2 is just an armor charge. It does have a built-in attack, which is also an engager, or you can use the armor to do some other follow-up like a grab. Back 3 is another option that's solid for speed, and even if it doesn't absorb an attack, it's not super risky on block. Up forward 3+4 does have some risk if you don't actually absorb an attack, but on hit, it goes to jag sprint for an uninterruptible mix-up. You'll see this in wake-up situations a lot since he has so many moves that leave him in great positions, and this will beat a lot of get-up options. So you get damage right into another easy mix-up. Which, speaking of, we'll do things a little out of order and talk about heat here since jag sprint gains armor when your meter is active. The armor of course gives it a defensive element, but it also makes it easier to use in the neutral. Plus, when the meter is burning, sprint 1 becomes a launcher and sprint 2 gives more advantage on block, so the stance becomes more useful overall. That's actually the only major change when heat is active, although it should be noted that his command grabs will give you back meter if you land them. Okay, so only a couple of small things left to mention. First, he has some back turn shenanigans, but that stuff is just there to add more confusion and has a lot of situational elements to it. By all means use it, but don't prioritize it over the core tools. As usual for these guides, we will also skip juggles since there are so many combo videos out there you can watch, but I did throw a link in the video description below where you can find some samples. So lastly, let's talk a little about chip. His most useful chip move is probably running 3 since you'll use that a fair bit to get in and continue pressure. Similarly, forward forward 2 and jag step 4 both do chip, so if you like using those for pressure, that'll give them a little boost. Sidestep 3+4 is a funny one because it does a massive 20 damage in chip, but it is a high and you have to do it off of a step, so it's not exactly spammable. Still useful if you can place it right. But perhaps the most important thing is an indirect buff King gets, which is that except for air grabs, grabs don't do chip damage. Since he often gets a lot of his damage from grabs, an opponent recovering a bunch of life late in a round is not as much of a concern for him as it would be for other characters. It's one of those subtle advantages that pop up from time to time due to a general system mechanic. This brings us to the end of our guide. I hope you found this succinct and helpful. Feedback is always welcome, so feel free to toss a comment down below, respectfully of course. Be mindful that in-depth guides that go over more specific details of move attributes and strategies will be saved for intermediate guides in the not so distant future. So be on the lookout for those. Lastly, big thanks to our patrons. You guys are the best and that support means more than you know. But to everyone, stay safe and we'll see you next time.